My dad spent 32 years working for the same utility company outside of Columbus, Ohio. Same building, same faded blue pickup truck, same thermos with his name scratched into the metal. He wasn't flashy, wasn't ambitious in a corporate ladder kind of way. He just believed in showing up every day and doing the job right. So when he finally retired at 65, my mom went all out. She rented out the back room of this country club that overlooks the golf course near our old neighborhood. Nothing too fancy, but nice enough that my dad kept muttering, "This is too much," under his breath all week. I was 38 at the time, married for 12 years to a man I thought I knew better than anyone. His name is Caleb. We lived about 40 minutes away in a newer subdivision, the kind with matching mailboxes and HOA emails about trash cans being visible from the street. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, 10 and 7. On the surface, my life looked stable, predictable, good. The night of the party, I remember staring at myself in the bathroom mirror before we left. I had on a navy wrap dress and heels I hadn't worn in months. My hair was curled, makeup done. I felt proud walking into that party as my dad's daughter, proud of my parents' long marriage, proud that my own marriage had outlasted half the couples we knew. Caleb was already impatient, tapping his watch while the kids wrestled in the hallway. "Babe, we're gonna be late," he called. "It's my dad's retirement party." "We're not late," I said, grabbing my purse. He gave me that tight smile he'd been wearing a lot lately, the one that didn't reach his eyes. The drive there felt normal. The kids argued about music. Caleb kept checking his phone at red lights. I noticed it, but I didn't think anything of it. He worked in regional sales for a medical supply company. His phone was always buzzing. That was the explanation I had memorized. The country club parking lot was packed. My mom had invited basically everyone my dad had ever worked with, plus church friends, neighbors, extended family. Inside, it smelled like cologne, cheap Chardonnay, and sheet cake frosting. There were gold balloons shaped like the number 65, and a big poster board with pictures of my dad from his 20s up until now. I nearly cried when I saw the one of him holding me as a baby. He hugged me tight when we walked in. "There's my girl," he said. "And Caleb, thanks for coming," as if we'd miss it. The first hour was exactly what you'd expect. My dad shaking hands, old coworkers slapping him on the back, my mom tearing up during her little speech about a lifetime of hard work. The kids ran off to steal mints from the dessert table. Caleb drifted away at some point. I assumed he'd found the bar. I was standing near the photo board talking to one of my dad's old supervisors when I saw her. She looked out of place, like she wasn't part of the retirement crowd. Late 20s maybe, blonde hair pulled into a low ponytail, simple black dress. She had this tense, scanning the room expression, like she was looking for someone specific. She made eye contact with me first. I gave her a polite smile, the kind you give strangers at family events. Then her eyes shifted past me, over my shoulder. I turned, and I saw Caleb standing near the windows that overlooked the golf course. His face had drained of color. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relaxed. He looked cornered. The woman walked straight toward him. Something inside me tightened. It wasn't jealousy exactly, it was recognition, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I excused myself mid-conversation and followed her path, weaving through tables and relatives. By the time I got close enough to hear them, she was already speaking. "You said you'd tell her," she said, her voice low but sharp. Caleb glanced at me and then back at her. "Not here," he hissed. My stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" I asked. Both of them turned to look at me, and I swear, in that second, I saw my entire life flicker like a faulty light bulb. The woman swallowed. She looked scared. Not angry, not smug. Scared. "I'm sorry," she said to me. "I didn't know about you at first." I laughed. I actually laughed, because that's what you do when something is so absurd your brain refuses to process it. "Didn't know about me," I repeated. Caleb stepped closer to me, reaching for my arm. "Let's go outside, please." I pulled away from him like he'd burned me. "No, you don't get to move this somewhere private." The room around us felt louder and quieter at the same time. Silverware clinking, someone laughing too hard at a joke, my dad across the room shaking hands. The woman's hands were shaking. "I have a 3-year-old, she said. I blinked. "With him," she finished. The words didn't land right away. They floated in the air between us like smoke. "A what?" I said. "A daughter," she whispered. "Her name is Ellie." Caleb closed his eyes like this was a migraine he could wait out. My ears started ringing. "You're lying," I told her. It came out flat, not even emotional, just a statement.
She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, swiped, turned the screen toward me. It was Caleb, sitting on a couch I didn't recognize, holding a daughter with blonde curls, his arm wrapped around her like he'd done it 1,000 times. The timestamp was from 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks earlier, he told me he had a 3-day conference in Chicago. I felt something tear inside my chest. Not physically, but deep, structural. How long? I asked him. He didn't answer. How long? I repeated, louder. A little over 4 years, the woman said. 4 years. My daughter was 7. My son was 10. 4 years meant this had started when our youngest was still in preschool, when I was packing lunches and volunteering for field trips and believing my husband when he kissed me goodbye every morning. You said you were separated, the woman said to him, her voice cracking. You told me the divorce was complicated because of the kids. The kids. My kids. A couple people nearby had started staring. My cousin Jenna was whispering to her husband. I could feel the ripples spreading through the room. Caleb finally spoke. This isn't the place. I looked at him and I didn't recognize him. The man in front of me felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. You brought your mistress to my dad's retirement party, I asked. I'm not, the woman started. Don't, I snapped, holding up hand. Just don't. She looked like she might cry. I didn't know he was still with you, she said again. I found out last month. I've been trying to get him to tell you. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. So you decided a crowded event with my entire family was the right moment. She hesitated. I was tired of being hidden. Hidden. The word echoed. I thought about all the late nights, the client dinners, the weekends he said he needed to travel, the way he'd grown distant, colder, but always had a logical explanation ready. 4 years. You have another child, I said slowly to Caleb. A whole other family. It's not like that, he said. I actually felt rage then. Hot and clean. It's exactly like that, I said. She's 3. That's not a mistake. That's a life. Across the room, my mom's voice carried as she called everyone to gather for my dad's speech.
People started shifting toward the front, but the tension near us was obvious now. Eyes kept darting over. I imagined my dad standing up there in a minute, thanking everyone for supporting him all these years, talking about loyalty, commitment. And here I was, finding out my husband had been living a double life. Does she know about our kids? I asked the woman. She nodded. He said he saw them every other weekend. I felt like I might throw up. Caleb reached for me again. We can fix this. Fix this? I stared at him. You don't accidentally fix a second child. The microphone screeched as my dad tapped it, testing it out. All right, everybody, if I can get your attention. The room quieted. I stood there, suspended between 2 realities. In one, I was the loyal wife at her father's celebration. In the other, I was the last person to know my marriage had already died years ago. And as my dad began thanking my mom for standing by him through everything, I looked at Caleb and realized I had no idea who I'd been standing beside for the last 12 years. My dad's voice filled the room like nothing had just happened. He stood up there in his pressed gray suit, hands gripping the podium, talking about early mornings and snowstorms and the pride of keeping the power on for families during winter. People laughed at his old work stories. My mom dabbed at her eyes. The gold balloons shimmered under the lights. And I was standing maybe 15 feet away from the man I'd built my entire adult life around, knowing he had another child, another home, another woman who thought she was his future. I don't remember walking away, but suddenly I was in the hallway outside the banquet room. The carpet was that ugly red and gold pattern every country club seems to have. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Caleb followed me out. Please, he said, let me explain. Explain what? That he'd been tucking our kids into bed and then driving to tuck another one in somewhere else. The woman, her name I would later learn was Hannah, didn't follow us right away. I could see her through the cracked door, standing alone near the windows, looking like she wished she could disappear. You've had a whole second life, I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine. It wasn't supposed to get this far, he said. I laughed under my breath. You had a baby. That's not this far. That's as far as it gets. He ran his hands through his hair the way he did when he was stressed about work. I used to find that gesture endearing. Now it just made me sick.
It started when things were bad between us, he said. I stared at him. When were things bad? After your mom got sick that year, you were always at their house. You were exhausted. We barely talked. So you decided to start another family? It wasn't like that, he repeated, like that phrase could undo reality. The door opened behind us and my cousin Jenna slipped out, her eyes wide. Is everything okay? She whispered. I shook my head. I didn't trust myself to speak. Caleb tried to put his hand on my back. I stepped away. I need to go home, I said. Together? He asked. The audacity of that question almost made me laugh again. I don't even know who you are, I said. Inside, applause erupted as my dad finished his speech. The sound felt like it was coming from underwater. Hannah stepped out then. She looked at me like she was waiting for permission to breathe. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. Then why are you here? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Because I've been living in an apartment for 3 years, raising his daughter mostly by myself while he plays husband somewhere else. I wanted you to know I'm not crazy. I wanted him to stop pretending. That hit differently. I looked at Caleb. Do you love her? He hesitated. That was my answer. Do you love me? I asked. Another hesitation. 12 years. 2 kids. A mortgage. Holidays. Inside jokes. Hospital visits. Vacations in Myrtle Beach. And he couldn't answer. My chest felt hollow. The banquet room door swung open and people started spilling into the hallway for Gagan drinks. My mom was the first to see my face. Megan, she said. What's wrong? And that was it. The dam broke. I don't remember deciding to say it. The words just came out. He has another child, I said. The hallway went silent in this strange, suffocating way. Conversations around us faltered. My mom blinked. What? With her, I said, nodding toward Hannah. Caleb muttered my name like a warning, but I was past protecting him. My dad stepped out behind my mom, confusion turning into something darker as he read the room. What's going on? He asked. I had never seen my father look small before, but in that moment he did. Not weak, just blindsided. 4 years, I said. He's had a 3-year-old daughter for 4 years. The math didn't even make sense, but no one corrected me. My dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He looked at Caleb, really looked at him, like he was trying to reconcile a man he'd shaken hands with for over a decade, with the one standing there now. You're telling me, my dad said slowly, that while my daughter was raising your children, you were out building another family. Caleb tried to speak, but my dad cut him off. Not one word, he said. People were openly staring now, whispers spreading like wildfire. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. This was supposed to be my dad's night, his celebration. Instead, it had turned into a public autopsy of my marriage. Hannah stepped forward unexpectedly. Sir, I didn't know he was still married when we started seeing each other. My dad didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Caleb. You lied to both of them, he said. Caleb looked cornered again, like earlier by the windows. I was going to fix it, I said. How? I asked. By getting a third apartment. My son's voice echoed down the hallway. Mom. I froze. He and his sister were standing near the dessert table, holding paper plates with cake. They looked confused. Curious. My daughter smiled at Caleb and waved. The sight of that nearly broke me. I walked toward them before anyone else could say anything. I knelt down, smoothing my son's hair. Hey, buddy, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you and your sister to go sit with Grandma for a minute, okay? Are we leaving? He asked. Yeah, I said. We are. He looked disappointed. But Grandpa's cake? We'll get some to go. They didn't ask more questions. They trusted me. That trust felt heavy in my hands. When I stood back up, Caleb was right there. We need to talk about how we're handling this with the kids, he said. We? I almost laughed again. You don't get to decide that tonight, I said. He lowered his voice. You're going to blow up their lives. You already did. Hannah was standing off to the side, tears sliding down her face silently. I didn't hate her in that moment the way I thought I would. I saw exhaustion in her, and something like desperation. Does your daughter know about us? I asked her quietly. She nodded. She knows she has a dad. She doesn't understand why he doesn't live with us. That sentence lodged itself in my throat. My dad stepped closer to me. You're coming home with us, he said firmly. I shook my head. No, I'm taking the kids to our house.
You shouldn't be alone tonight, my mom said. I won't be, I said, though I had no idea what that meant. Caleb tried one last time. Let's not do this here. Let's go home and figure it out. Home. Which one? I looked at him, at the man who had shared my bed last night, who had kissed me before we walked into this building, who had texted someone else good night on those business trips. I don't think you understand, I said quietly. There is no figuring it out. You chose. His face shifted then. Not guilt, not remorse. Fear. Because I think that was the moment he realized he had actually lost control of the narrative. I walked back into the banquet room, grabbed my purse off the chair, and told my mom I'd call her later. She hugged me so tight I thought I might collapse into her. As I led my kids out to the parking lot, I could feel eyes on my back. Pity, shock, curiosity. Caleb followed us outside, calling my name. I buckled the kids into the back seat with hands that felt numb. Mom, are you crying? My daughter asked. I wiped my cheeks. I hadn't even realized. I'm okay, I lied. Caleb stood by my window before I could close the door. Don't do anything drastic, he said. I stared at him through the glass. You already did, I said. Then I rolled up the window, started the engine, and drove away from my dad's retirement party, knowing that the life I thought I had ended in a hallway that smelled like sheet cake and cheap champagne. The drive home felt longer than it ever had before, even though it was the same stretch of highway I'd taken 100 times. The kids were quiet in the back seat, which scared me more than if they'd been fighting. My son kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, like he was trying to read my face. My daughter hummed softly to herself, unaware of the earthquake that had just split our family in half. My phone started vibrating before I even merged onto the interstate. Caleb's name lit up the screen over and over. I declined every call. Then the text started. Please answer. We need to talk. I'm coming home. The last one made my chest tighten. I pulled into our driveway and just sat there for a second, engine running. The house looked exactly the same. 2-story, beige siding, porch light on a timer. The minivan in the driveway. The flower beds I planted last spring. It looked like a safe place. I turned off the car. Okay, I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. Everybody inside. They climbed out and ran up the walkway like any other night. My son unlocked the door with the code. He was so proud when we first taught him how to use it. I followed them in and shut the door behind us, locking it manually, even though the system did it automatically. Can we watch a movie? My daughter asked. Sure, I said. Anything. Noise. Distraction. They changed into pajamas while I stood in the kitchen staring at the counter. On the fridge were drawings from school, a calendar with dentist appointments circled, a photo of the 4 of us at the beach last summer, Caleb's arm around me, kids grinning, sunlight in our eyes. I walked over and pulled the photo down. I couldn't look at it. My son came back in and noticed my face again. Mom, is Dad in trouble? That question sliced right through me. I knelt down in front of him, cupping his face in my hands. Your dad and I are having some grown-up problems, I said carefully. It's not because of you. It's not because of your sister. Do you understand that? He nodded slowly, but I could see confusion all over him. Are you mad at him? He asked. I hesitated. Yes, I said. The honesty surprised both of us. Before he could ask anything else, headlights swept across the living room walls through the front windows. My stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be here yet. I thought I'd have more time. I stood up and walked to the door before he could use the code. I opened it just enough to step outside and shut it behind me. Caleb stood on the porch, tie loosened, hair a mess. He looked desperate, not heartbroken. Desperate. Let me in, he said. No. Megan, come on. You don't get to walk in here like nothing happened. He exhaled sharply. This is my house too. The word my hit me like a slap. You forfeited that when you started another family. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The kids are inside. I know. That's why we're not screaming. He rubbed his face with both hands. I messed up. I know that. But we can fix it. How? I asked again, genuinely wanting to know what fantasy he was living in. You're going to erase a 3-year-old? He looked away. That silence again. That cowardly silence. Do you love her? I care about her. That's not what I asked. He swallowed. It's complicated. I laughed bitterly. No. It's actually very simple. You lied to me for 4 years. He took a step toward the door. I blocked him. I need space, I said. You need to leave. I'm not staying with her. He snapped quickly. That caught my attention. Where were you planning to stay? I asked. He hesitated. A hotel. So she thinks you're leaving me, and I think you're going to her, and you're telling both of us something different. He didn't answer.
It hit me then. This wasn't just cheating. This was manipulation on an expert level. He had two separate realities running simultaneously, and he'd been the director of both. I want you to think about something, I said quietly. Every time you kissed me goodbye before a conference, you were going to her. It wasn't every time. I stared at him. Are you seriously correcting me right now? He clenched his jaw. I was trying to figure out how to end it without blowing up everything. By waiting until she forced your hand in my dad's retirement party. His eyes flickered with anger for the first time. She had no right to show up there. I blinked at him. She had no right. I repeated. She's raising your child alone. She knew the situation was messy. I felt something inside me shift then. Something colder. Clearer. You lied to her too, I said. He didn't deny it. That realization did something to me. It wasn't just that he betrayed me. It was that he had no loyalty to anyone. Not really. Not me. Not her. Not even his own daughter. You need to leave, I said again, more firmly. Tonight. He looked at the door. Then back at me. What are you telling the kids? The truth. Age appropriate. You're not going to poison them against me. I almost smiled at that. You did that yourself. For a second, I thought he might push past me. Instead, he stepped back slowly. This doesn't have to be a divorce, he said. The word hung between us. Divorce. I hadn't said it yet. I'd been dancing around it in my head, but hearing it out loud felt like acknowledging a death. You made vows to me, I said. You stood in front of our families and promised. He looked tired. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, I said. Not hiding a child. Inside, I heard my daughter's laughter from the living room. The sound twisted my heart. You have 5 minutes, I said. Grab whatever you need and go. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I'd drawn a line. You're really doing this, he said. No, I replied. You did this. I'm reacting. He walked inside without another word.
I followed him, making sure he didn't go near the kids' room. He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started stuffing clothes into it. Watching him pack felt surreal. This was the man who had built IKEA furniture with me at midnight, who had held my hand during both C-sections, who knew how I took my coffee. Or at least I thought he did. My son appeared in the hallway. Dad? Caleb froze. I stepped forward gently. Go back to the movie, sweetheart. But my son didn't move. He looked at his dad, then at the bag. Are you going on a trip? He asked. Caleb crouched down, forcing a smile. Just for a little while, buddy. For work? There it was again. That word that had covered so many lies. Something like that, Caleb said. I felt rage surge up again. After he zipped the bag, he stood there awkwardly, like he was waiting for me to break down, to beg, to ask him to stay. I didn't. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back at me. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I met his eyes steadily. But you did, I replied. He left. The door clicked shut. And for the first time in 12 years, I was standing alone in my house without my husband, knowing there was another little girl somewhere out there who called him Daddy too. The house felt enormous after he left. The quiet was suffocating, almost alien. My kids were still in the living room, curled up with blankets and half-eaten bowls of popcorn. I watched them, heart hammering, wondering how much of tonight they'd actually understood. I didn't have the energy to explain everything. Maybe I never would. For now, the most important thing was keeping them safe, keeping them sane, keeping them kids. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the calendar on the fridge. The sticky notes, the school events, the dentist appointments, they all looked innocent and meaningless now, like pieces of a life I thought I'd built on solid ground, but that was actually sitting on quicksand. Every morning, every lunchbox note, every bedtime story suddenly carried a kind of weight that I couldn't shake. I felt like I had been living in a play, performing a role while someone else had been writing the script behind my back. By the time the kids went to bed, the adrenaline was gone and left me hollow. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with a blanket around me, phone in hand, scrolling through texts I had ignored for hours.
There was nothing from Caleb anymore. Not even a single "I'm sorry" text. He'd called me a dozen times earlier, left voice messages full of stammered excuses. I hadn't listened to any of them. I didn't want to hear his voice. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through social media, half hoping to see him, half terrified. Nothing. No photos with Hannah, no posts with Ellie. It was almost surreal, like the other life didn't exist except in the hallway of the country club, and in my mind where it kept replaying over and over. The thought made me shake. 4 years of hidden life, 4 years of secrets, and I'd never seen a single clue until today. I wondered if I had been naive or just too trusting, but the question felt pointless now. Trust had been stolen, replaced with lies. The next morning, I woke early, too restless to sleep. I checked my phone, still nothing from Caleb. I drove the kids to school in silence, which was unusual for us. Usually my son would tell me about every single friend in his class, every little annoyance, every tiny victory. But he was quiet. My daughter held my hand in the back seat, her small fingers gripping mine, and I realized just how much I needed to be present for them. They were my anchor now. After dropping them off, I drove to a park I hadn't visited in years. It was one of those small city parks in Columbus, the kind with swings that squeaked and a pond with ducks that waddled like they owned the place. I sat on a bench, staring at the water, trying to think. My mind kept returning to Hannah, to Ellie. I had so many questions for Caleb. Was he visiting her every weekend because he felt guilty? Did he love her at all, in the way he used to say he loved me? And what did that mean for our kids? I couldn't even begin to guess. I stayed at the park for hours, replaying the night over and over. Every detail, the way Caleb's face drained of color when he saw her, the look of terror in Hannah's eyes, the stunned silence in the hallway at the country club. It all felt like a movie I was trapped inside, and I was the lead character who had just had her world explode. The reality was that nothing would ever feel normal again. When I got home, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was from Caleb. It wasn't long. It said, "I know I've broken everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'll give you space. I love you." No signature, just those 5 sentences scrawled in his familiar handwriting. I crumpled it in my hand. Love. That word felt meaningless now. Over the next few days, life felt like moving through water. People texted to ask how I was, but I couldn't explain it. Friends offered to help, but there was no helping this. Even my parents avoided the subject, worried about intruding, I think. I became hyper-aware of every little interaction, every call, every message from Caleb. I blocked him on social media, though I knew it didn't erase the fact that he had another family. At night, I would lie awake thinking about the kids. I'd lie awake imagining Ellie, his other daughter, sleeping in her crib, probably thinking he was her daddy in the same way my kids thought he was theirs, and that thought cut deeper than anything else. Because in some twisted way, he had 2 perfect little worlds, and I was left trying to hold together the one he had shattered. I started documenting everything. Names, dates, excuses he'd used, the flights he'd taken, the stories he told each family. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. I had to remember. I had to know the full extent of what happened, because I couldn't trust him to tell me. I needed a map of the lies so that when the kids inevitably asked questions, I could answer without collapsing. Then came the confrontation I didn't see coming. Hannah called. She said she wanted to meet, somewhere neutral, somewhere public. I debated ignoring her, but curiosity, anger, and the need for answers won. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. When she arrived, she looked exhausted but resolute. I ordered coffee and we sat across from each other, the air thick with tension. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she said first. "Not you, not my daughter, not your family." "I get that," I said. "But 4 years? 4 years of hiding?" "I didn't know at first," she admitted. "He lied to me. He said he was separated. I believed him. I thought we were building a life together. I didn't know whether to feel anger at her or at him. But I realized that she, like me, had been manipulated. She had been as trapped in this web as I was, just in a different way. We talked for hours, not about Caleb directly at first, but about Ellie, about our kids, about how fragile the trust in families could be. By the end, I didn't feel a sense of closure. I didn't even feel peace, but I felt clarity. I knew I couldn't have him in my life the way he used to be. I knew I couldn't let him slide between 2 worlds, splitting the hearts of 2 families. That night, I sat on the couch again, my kids asleep, and stared at the dark ceiling.
I thought about my father, who deserved his celebration without chaos. I thought about my mother, who deserved years of peace without knowing her son-in-law was leading a double life. I thought about myself, trying to reconcile the life I thought I had with the life I was left with. Caleb didn't try to come back after that. Not in person, not in texts, not in calls. And for a long time, I was grateful for the silence. It gave me space to rebuild, to think, to plan, to be with my kids in a world where the truth no longer lurked around every corner. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. Maybe I never will. But I do know that I survived the shock, the betrayal, the revelation that someone I trusted completely could be living a secret life for years. And more importantly, I know I gave my kids something he couldn't: honesty, presence, and a life that isn't fractured by lies. Months later, I started sleeping again. I started laughing again, small, cautious bursts at first. I began to plan little things for the kids: weekend trips, new traditions, summer camps. Not to replace what was lost, but to build something real from the rebel. And every time I saw a father figure in the park with his child, I felt both a sting and a sense of perspective. Love isn't a guarantee, it's a choice. And Caleb had made his. I was making mine too. Eventually, I learned about Ellie indirectly, from Hannah. They were doing well. She was healthy, curious, and happy. And that was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the lies, but knowing that in some other life, Caleb was being a dad too. And I had to live with the fact that my children and I had been collateral damage in a story he refused to write honestly. I can't erase the memories of that night. I can't forget standing in that hallway at my dad's retirement party, seeing him with another family. But I've learned to carry it differently now, not with the weight of shame or confusion, but with the sharp clarity of survival. And every day, when I tuck my kids into bed, I remind myself of one thing: honesty isn't easy, but it's the only thing I can trust. And as for Caleb, he's gone from our lives, not because I wanted revenge, but because some betrayals are too vast to stitch back together, and some truths are too heavy to carry alongside someone who refuses to be real. I don't hate him, not completely. I pity him for the choices he made, for the life he couldn't manage with integrity. And as I watch my kids grow, safe in the knowledge that their mother will never hide the truth from them, I realize that's the only justice I need.